Tēnei hui. Welcome everyone to today's Transport Committee meeting. I'm going to commence with a karakia now that I'll lead. It's the standard Regional Council 1 whakatakataho, as Pierre always says. I'll set the pace, you set the volume. Has anyone got the Te Kupenga app on their phone?
Yes, on my iPad I have here.
Just let people a chance to pull it up. If you haven't got the words in front of you, don't worry. You can be in the karakia in spirit. All right. Whakatakataho ki te uru, whakatakataho ki te tōna, kia mā kina ki uta, kia mā taratara
ki tae.
Hei hiri ati ana
te kura, he tia.
hei hohu, tihei, mauri. All right, do we have any notices? Nope. Okay. Was that a yes, Charlie?
Oh, no thanks.
Any apologies? I haven't received any myself through the governance team, so it looks like we are a full muster. So thank you so much, including to our advisory members for being here, and to Linda for coming up from Palmerston North. Thank you for being with us. Do we have any conflict of interest declarations? No. Right. Well, what I want to do now is move to the minutes of the meeting on 3 February. Just to let you know and signal what I intend here, we are simply going to move and adopt those minutes. I will then ask whether there are any specific matters arising from those minutes that people would like to address by way of a question, whether to staff or any member of the committee. I don't, however, wish this to descend into another debate about the topic in hand. We thoroughly canvassed it at the time, but I do have a couple of questions of Linda just about update on that. So could someone please move that those minutes are a true and correct record? Is anyone willing to do that? Councillor Kerr, do I have a seconder?
On the wall.
Mayor Walker, thank you. All those in favour?
Aye.
Anyone against? So that's carried, the minutes are approved. Now, can I just say, within the parameters that I've just outlined, are there any specific matters arising from those minutes that people wish to raise? Okay, well, I just wish to get an update from Linda on the status of the program business case that was referred to. That's the $400,000 program business case. Now, before I ask you for that update, can I just get you, Linda, to clarify my understanding from the meeting? If you go back to the agenda page, not the minutes, but the actual agenda page, the agenda for this meeting, there is the slides you presented of the investments in the corridor, which are planned by Wakakotahi, some confirmed, some subject to funding. Can I just confirm, before you talk about the status of the program business case, Linda, that those investments are all intended to ensure that the state highway posted speed limit of 80 kilometres remains a safe and appropriate speed. They're not intended to enable any future increase to the speed limit. Was that the intention?
We could never rule out a change to the speed limit if the government decided to invest hundreds of millions of dollars into State Highway 5, but I couldn't commit that that would happen.
But the works that you've envisaged there, I was reasonably clear last time that they were, as you say, to complement the 80 kilometre posted speed limit, right?
Yes.
Okay, in that context, where's the program business case, the second bullet point, pending funding, where's that at the moment?
So the programme business case currently at point of entry phase, and it will go to the delegations committee later this month, so late March. for a funding decision for that 400,000 that you mentioned.
In late March.
Yes.
And is there a specific plan? You were saying it needed to have a specific plan prepared. Is that available, or do we have? I mean, was there going to be a detailed plan for the upgrade as a prerequisite to putting that in for funding?
That's the point of entry.
Is
yes.
that what's called?
Yes. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. Lingo.
The point of entry is still being completed, so it'll go
That
to
goes to delegations end of March.
Still being completed to go to. Okay.
I would just say, if I may, Chair, during March as well, we will be looking to stand up a project steering committee for that piece of work and a governance group for the corridor as well. And we would like either RTC members or council participation in those groups.
Okay, can you just unpack that a little bit? Just explain what you just said.
So obviously the State Highway 5 for Hawke's Bay is strategic corridor. So we would like to ensure that we have the right level of governance over the work that we are all intending to do on that corridor.
Yes.
So we will have, we're looking to set up a governance group for that, for the life of that work, and then a specific steering committee for that programme business case.
And okay, so a steering committee for the specific program business case in the first instance.
Yes.
So would that be after it goes to the delegations panel, or?
We're looking to get that stood up in March, so concurrently with it, we're reasonably confident on the funding.
And so we'd be able to look at the detailed plan at that stage, the point of entry, whoever's on that steering committee?
Yes.
Now, Linda, have you got any suggestions for who would be on that steering committee? Is it TAG members, or what's the thinking?
We're
Is
very
that up
much
to us?
open to your feedback on that. We see the need for iwi and for all council representatives, whether you wish that to be RTC members or whether you feel that officers would be more appropriate. We're open to your guidance.
Okay, well, what I might do is suggest, if we could record in the minutes, that we'll take advice from the TAG group as to how we take up your offer of a steering group to look at that program business case in the first instance and who should populate it, and come back to you with that. All right?
Yep, perfect.
All right. Now, I just want to say this, I guess, in conclusion on this topic, that I believe everyone here is coming at this issue, albeit from different places, with the best of intentions, all right, and with a job to do. We have a job as regional leaders to look after our communities and their interests and their passions and their points of pain, and Waka Kotahi has its statutory mandate to reduce safety. So we're coming at it from different directions, but I just have to say that there is a comment in the minutes, and it was put to us that as regional leaders, we're putting safety and efficiency ahead of, we're putting efficiency and I guess economics ahead of safety. I have to say I don't think that that's fair. I think the Waka Kotahi position hasn't been one of safety first, but safety alone. And when Waka Kotahi hasn't in fact ranked safety versus efficiency and economics, it's not really a matter of saying to us that we're putting one over the other. I think we're just coming at it from different directions, and if we could kind of, in a healing way, acknowledge that reality. We haven't had any intention as regional leaders to put efficiency ahead of people's lives. That's just not where we're coming from, London. I needed to say that. You put that to us last time in response to everything that was thrown at you, and I get that, but I think if we're going to put a line under that meeting, that needs to be named and tabled. You can comment on what I've just said if you like, and then perhaps we could leave it there. Okay, thank you. All right, so let's move on to the...
Martin, may I just ask a couple of questions just along where you're at? The steering group,
Yeah.
can we have, via the tag if appropriate, the actual purpose of it and how it can influence essentially what the terms of reference are? I think that's really important that we get that information as the request goes into our tag group.
Well, I think the TAG group should perhaps talk to Linda's team about how that could best operate
Yeah.
and come back to us with some advice. And, you know, we'll just have to, I think, as we've recorded, I don't think we need a separate meeting to appoint that
No.
tag group, but so that steering group. What do you think, Peter? Should we move that members of this committee will consider and respond to that invitation on the basis of advice from the tag group and act accordingly? Can I just move that?
Oh, do you need to move a motion? It's
Do you think I need to, or just minute that we'll do that? Okay, let's just minute we do that.
I agree.
Okay, all right, that's just minuted that we'll take that advice and,
Yeah.
and decide how to engage with that invitation. Thank you very much. That's very constructive. Thank you, Linda. All right. Follow-ups from the previous the previous agenda.
A question from me, Mr. Chair. Have you received a letter back from?
Minister Woods?
Yes, I'm just checking that. Yeah. So it was sent the 16th of February. Have you received acknowledgement or a letter back from the Minister?
No. And I'm disappointed about that. Because as I said in that letter, from our perspective, this is a funding issue that Cabinet needs to own. Fundamentally, Waka Kotahi is operating within funding parameters and direction from government. So that is most disappointing that we haven't had the benefit, not even an email to say receipt acknowledged, nothing. And yeah, I hate to sort of attribute any design to that lack of response, as opposed to perhaps a minister who's exceptionally busy in an incredibly difficult context for the government as a whole, and there was a number of other things and priorities across the country that he's trouble with or working on. But it is incredibly disappointing that all of the the region stood behind that letter and nothing back. So that's all I wanted to say. Councillor Kerr.
And one.
Maybe we should protest in Parliament, man.
I'll leave that over to you. Not my style.
Oh, you'd look good there.
Oh well, I guess subjective view of yours. Thank you, Craig.
Through you, Chair, can I just have some clarification around the business case? And because ultimately, keeping our State Highway 5 safe isn't going to be addressed by an 80k speed reduction on its own. So our consideration needs to be that business case that is going to be completed by the end of March, we're in the middle of March now. And how long will that, I need some clarification, how long will the business case take? And then how do we progress getting the $100 million, which is probably not going to be, in terms of a corridor management, sufficient, but how do we get some investment in our State Highway 5 for the long term through this process of the business case?
Well, we'd left that item on the agenda behind. We're now into follow-ups. What I think we need to do is take up the invitation to be part of that business case oversight through the steering group and ask that very question. But are you wanting to go back to the previous item on the agenda and ask another question about it?
So we're going to have this in general business this
No.
Are we discussing it now?
Yeah, I asked if there were any matters arising, and that was
Yes.
it. So I wasn't planning on coming back to it.
Right.
Yeah, we could have done that.
Yeah.
Were you assuming that perhaps we would come back to that topic again?
Well, I think that, we need to be working through some of those items that were raised.
The letter?
Yes.
Yeah, well, I mean, the issue of investment is, as I say, one that lays ultimately at the seat of government. But, Linda, can you help me out here? Are you able to answer Mayor Sandra's question?
Absolutely, Chair, and I'll cover it in more detail in time for questions in my presentation. So we'll cover the PBC as well as the safety improvement investment. So there should be time for a bit more insight and then any further questions you've got there.
Thank you.
Okay, would that be right? Yeah. Right, are there any other points coming out of the follow-ups?
Yeah, similar question to, did we get a letter back from Minister of Transport? Have we had a formal letter back from the letter that was sent to Waka Kotahi? Item 2. Have you had a response from the CE or the Chair, Martin?
No. No.
Okay. I just would like to express my disappointment that there hasn't been due respect given to the mayors and chairs and the chair of this committee of our regional letter from either the Minister of Transport or the Chief Executive of Waka Kotahi. Just, yeah.
Okay. I just want to ensure that no one's feeling aggrieved with where we've left the State Highway 5 discussion at this point. I do feel that we've debated it and we've got an opportunity to have questions from Linda about the program business case, so are we happy to move on? Okay.
Yeah, someone's hand up down there.
Jag, is it?
Yep, this is me. Sorry, Martin. Just a couple of questions. I know you don't want to debate the same matter again. Just a couple of questions are relevant, expanding from Mayor Sandra. Probably quick for you, Linda. I think one of the question is, if you spend this 100 million, what you're talking at the moment, and then you do a program business case later on, how would we ensure this money we are spending now is not wasted if the business case then flag another option?
Thank you for your question, Jag, and it's a very good one. That is part of the work that's underway through our safety improvement team and those that are involved in developing the point of entry and then working with the community on the programme business case. So we'll be looking at a short-term package of options that can progress without needing the further information from the programme business case, as well as then a staged investment of the safety improvements alongside the programme business case. So they will be integrated, but there's certainly short-term investment that can be made.
Yeah. So if I give you one example, and sorry, I'm picking up.
Jag, I've been advised that the questions should really be from the voting members.
Okay, no worries.
And I do think we need to get to the bottom of this through the offline process that's been proposed, because that is the issue that's troubling everyone, that money's been committed to something that's a specific option rather than with an eye to the broader future. So I understand where your question's coming from. Ms. Sandra's asked it as well, and we'll hear from Linda a bit further down the track about that. Look, I'm having what my colleagues would describe as a shocker this morning. And I'd just like to do what I was supposed to do at the outset and actually read you the housekeeping. So yes. Before we move to the next item on the agenda, firstly, can I just move that those follow-ups be received? Could someone move that the follow-ups be received?
Just have one other further question, Chair, on the follow-ups.
Okay.
On the agenda item for December meeting, item 7, investigate resubmitting Hawke's Bay Expressway multimodal funding request to Waka Kotahi. I just wonder where we've got to that. It's been added to agenda for discussion with Waka Kotahi.
Good question.
Through Chair, that would have to be resubmitted through our next RLTP. There's no opportunity to add new items once the National Land Transport Program has been confirmed. So we'll be adding that into our next RLTP.
Well, I think that
Do
is...
we have a business case for this work?
No, well, I mean, that's what I think this means is that we need to be better prepared the next time by understanding precisely why this failed this time. Now, Linda has shared with us that the reason it failed is because it ironically had a cycling component which was oversubscribed, which was a rather tragic irony given the government policy statement settings. We sort of victims of, trying to align with where the government's coming from, we thought. And perhaps a lack of budget allocation for cycling was the real problem there. So if it is true that we cannot repitch for a business case short of the next regional land transport plan, then I think, we probably need to workshop how we make that pitch land next time.
Through you, Chair, the officers are working with Waka Kotahi officers, Paul Murphy and Lisa, to repitch that for next time. So work is already underway, but it won't be until the next program.
All right, so we're going to I think Councillor Kerr, you'd moved that those follow-ups be received. Could I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Mayor Walker. All in favour?
Aye.
All right, now I'm going to go back to the housekeeping. So pretend it's 10 o'clock, and I'm saying this straight after the karakia. This meeting is being live streamed on Council's Facebook page and has for the last 20 minutes, and recorded for viewing at a later date on your YouTube channel. In an earthquake, drop, cover and hold. And it says here, if the shaking is long and strong, I need to move a correction. It is if the shaking is long or strong, and I would request the governance team to correct the instruction for future meetings. It's a little bugbear of mine.
Okay.
It's actually quite a big difference between long and long or. But when shaking subsides, leave the building through the nearest exit and proceed immediately towards Napier Hill along Dalton Street to Tiffin Park, continuing up to the steps to Cameron Road. Those on the screen, you'll have to make your own arrangements. Evacuation. If an emergency alarm sounds, immediately evacuate the building through the nearest exit and proceed to the assembly area on the grass at the corner of Dalton and Vortier Streets. Emergency exits are clearly signposted, and I am to point these out. So apparently they're clearly signposted. Here we go. There's one right there, up the door. Thank you, Katie. The council chamber is currently designated as a public space, and the council's policy is that 1.5 metre physical distancing is required and face masks must be worn at all times. So well done everyone to this point. Toilets are located down the hall to the left of the chamber entrance. All right, any minor items not on the agenda? All right, now, Andrea, are you here?
Yes, I am.
Oh, hello. Yes, sorry, you are too. Yep. Would you like to, where would you feel most comfortable presenting from?
Will I come and join at the table?
Yes, up the front here.
Andrew, if you'd like to come up and introduce yourself, we are absolutely...
Mr. Chair, what item is this?
This is 6.
Okay, so just to confirm that the cycling governance model item,
Is number 7.
Drawn from
We'll get to that when we get to it.
sorry, I'm working off the council website agenda, and I had it at number 4, so that's why I asked
really?
the question. Yep.
Go figure.
Yep,
I've got it
so
at number
that-
7.
That's
Yes.
why I asked the question, my apologies.
No, we haven't, you might have,
Yeah, wow.
yes, understandably thought that I'd just
I did, I thought you just
stick that on
jumped.
the floor as well, but
No.
I thought you'd been very effective, very flexible.
no. Good morning, Andrea. Please introduce yourself. And I've got to say, we're absolutely thrilled to have you here. I had a conversation with Andrea a month ago and was most heartened to hear about the broader strategic approach to the port's view of transport in a national freight context and that it was taking. So Andrea's asked for an opportunity, and I've offered that to come and present to us about that, which is fantastic. So that's what this presentation is all about. The other thing I just wanted to mention, and I apologise, Guy, I meant to acknowledge your presence here today, so welcome, thank you for being with us as well. So I'm gradually catching up to the point we should have been at the beginning. Andrea, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. although aside from the formalities of the meeting itself, I will welcome questions as we go through this presentation. So it's not a formal presentation, it is an opportunity to have a bit of a discussion as well. And then just a reminder of how long I have. Was it?
I don't actually have a run sheet as such.
We typically would be 10 minutes would be a guideline.
10 minutes per presentation, and we'll have 5 or 10 minutes for questions. How would
That
that
sounds
be?
great, yes, thank you very much. So I'm the General Manager of Strategy and Innovation at Napier Port. And what that means in its context is I lead the IT side of our business, our overall strategic planning and delivery. And then the innovation component of our business is around new solutions, and it's sort of focused on customers. So I'm, sorry, getting used to the mouse. What I'll do this morning is in the information pack that I sent through, I've given a little bit of an overview around Napier Port, and I'm not going to dwell on it. I have met some of the people that are here today, and many others I haven't, but I sort of assume that you can read that at your leisure since we don't have a lot of time. What I would like to do though is to take you through Napier Port's strategy in context of the transport planning across the region, so what we've been working on and what our overall strategic plan is in that regard. I've also had a look at the Hawke's Bay Regional Transport Plan, and so a discussion around the alignments between what Napier Port is doing and also the Regional Land Transport Plan, and also where I see opportunities for us working together into the future. And then when Martin and I had a conversation, I did mention that I've been involved in the work that the Ministry of Transport is doing around the New Zealand logistics and supply chain study, so to share our involvement in that process going forward, and where I think that there might be a place for the Regional Council's Transport Committee to get involved in that as well. Is everyone sort of comfortable with that as an overview?
Right.
So I'm not going to, in the interest of time as well, I won't go through the introduction. I'll leave you to read it in detail. Other than in its overall context, Napier Port historically has been extremely good at innovation and efficiencies inside the port gates. So taking care and managing customer cargo once it hits the port gates. And with our strategy update that we did around about 2 years ago, what we did is we broadened that and said that if we are to contribute to a thriving region, then we need to take care of the transport networks for customer cargo to and from origin and destination. So overall, that's part of our strategic plan, is to be able to future-proof the supply chain networks for cargo that comes into and out of Napier Port. And the regions that we're focusing on is the whole central lower North Island region, because we really appreciate that resilience is absolutely part of the network that New Zealand needs, and also sustainability. We've seen that historically with the Kaikoura earthquake, where cargo was actually diverted from Centreport or Wellington through to Napier, and we're now seeing that now with COVID and the congestion around cargo in Auckland and Tauranga ports. So again, this slide, I'm not going to dwell too much on. This is the overview of Napier Port, but there are a couple of things that I'll point out that you may or may not be aware of, which is so recently around establishing a sustainable supply chain network. We have been focused on the establishment of a Napier Port's logistics service. So we do, and Nicholas, who's part of this committee, runs that. And so Nicholas is going to jump in and out as he can contribute to our conversation as well. But we have 3 trains per day running now. It connects us between Palmerston North and Napier. So this is in addition to the daily train that's going from Wairoa to Napier with logs on it. So that train started off on a weekend service with a diversion of assets that weren't being utilised, but now it has moved into a daily service Monday to Friday. The other thing is that at the moment 80% of Napier Port's cargo comes from within a 100 kilometre radius of the port. So we naturally get that cargo anyway. There's a region of cargo that's called contestable, and it is the cargo that sits in the sort of central western North Island. It's called contestable because cargo owners there can have a choice around import and export freight across Centreport, Taranaki and Napier. At the moment, and that depends on whether it's bulk cargo or containerised. So Taranaki does bulk cargo, doesn't do containerised. Centreport does both. At the moment, only 34% of that contestable cargo flows through Napier Port. So there's 90,000 TEUs of containerised cargo that sits in that region. So we get 34% of that volume, which is only about 10% of our total volume. With the building of Sixth Wharf on Napier Port, what we now want to do is basically sweat that asset and generate returns for our region, and that returns economically in the terms of jobs associated with running the wharf and the supply chain connected to that, but also from a resilience perspective for cargo in that area. And so that's why our focus at the moment is on growth through cargo that's coming from the central North Island, and the growth of Palmerston North is becoming a logistics hub. So I'll talk a bit about that further on. But to that end, as well as Napier Port itself, we are equal shareholders in Manawatu Inland Port, which is in Longburn, just south of Palmerston North. So next, I thought it would be useful to share with you what our overall business strategy is for the port. So very much, we see our purpose as creating a thriving region by connecting cargo owners to the world. We absolutely understand that we have a mutually beneficial relationship with our region. So our region being primarily a primary produce region, Napier Port becomes that gateway and that access to market in an economical way for our region. So if our region wasn't there, Napier Port wouldn't be there. But sort of vice versa. If Napier Port wasn't there, the cost to get cargo to and from our region from other ports in New Zealand would make it uncompetitive on a global stage. So that's why we see our purpose as very much one around that word together, building a thriving region. And then our goals to enable that or achieve that is absolutely about that goal there that says customer connection or building solutions for customers. So recently we had a series of customers that came to talk to us to give us their feedback around our performance and how we take care of their cargo. And one of the pieces of feedback that really resonated with us, which was Napier Port, you shouldn't compare yourselves with other ports in New Zealand. You should compare yourselves with other supply chains because your service is smashing it in the port market. And we can see that at the moment around things like schedule reliability. So the probability of cargo getting away is actually higher at Napier than other ports in New Zealand at the moment. So our strategy is one around developing solutions for cargo owner customers to give them access to the world stage for import and export. The other goal that sits in there is around harnessing data and technology. So it is about the use of information to be able to optimise cargo flows. And then through optimisation and taking out waste, sharing that value back to all stakeholders in the supply chain. The networked infrastructure is the main reason I'm here today. It's about ensuring that we take an NZ Inc. point of view and that our supply chain network across road, rail and ports is absolutely connected. This is part of the discussion around State Highway 5, not that I'm going to go anywhere near that, but for the long-term sustainability of New Zealand's supply chains, we absolutely need to work collaboratively across road, rail and port infrastructure, and so that is part of our strategy. The last element around collaborative partnerships is also acknowledging that we're not here to do it on our own, but we are here to facilitate outcomes for the benefit of cargo owners. So our strategy overall is one around growth, and we try and keep a balance between growth in terms of improved safety outcomes, growth in terms of use of our data and technology, growth in terms of the development of our people and their skills and their capability for the future, and then also economic growth through developing solutions for customers. Is everyone sort of comfortable with that and the pacing? So knowing that in its overall context, what I did want to share is, or focus in on that sort of networked infrastructure side, because this is how it is particularly relevant to the Transport Committee. And so what we have been doing recently is we've been thinking about what we can do as a port that adds value to all stakeholders in the supply chain that we can uniquely do. And so part of that is the establishment of Napier Port's logistics service. We are in a unique position that we get to see in advance all import and export cargo coming into Napier. And so by providing a logistics service, we can take waste out. And what I mean by that is we can see an import box is coming in and where it's going to. And then we can also see where an export box is being generated from and where it's going out of. So our logistics service is balancing the import and export flows on the landside transport network. So the aim is with the rail services that we're filling up the rail with full containers going from Napier into Palmerston North, and then full containers going back out. And this is traditionally where other road and Kiwi Rail on the rail side providers struggle, because they only see their own cargo. So what typically then happens is, say, an empty container for export is picked up in Napier, it's transported to the customer, they load it and send a full one back. Whereas if we can send a full one around about to their destination and it's unloaded and reloaded and back, that's the waste that we're talking about taking out of the network. And so the value of that, the value components are multiple. So one is around transport cost itself for the cargo owners. It's much more efficient in terms of carbon consumption, so full both ways, as opposed to transporting air. It's much less load on the roading network because we are transporting full containers both ways. And so, and that's where we're focusing now, on that landside transport network. And I see that's absolutely aligned with our region's transport management plan as well. We have also recently done some other things that's focused more locally. So for example, the vehicle booking system that we now run means that trucks need to book a time to come into the port so we can smooth out the flow of trucks onto the network. We don't get peaks of truck traffic, but neither do we get congestion outside the gate that we historically saw. And we've also, we're the first operation in New Zealand to put what's called the B double trucks on the road. So these are the trucks that you can see 2 trailers and 2 40-foot containers on. So we were the first organisation in New Zealand to achieve that. And what that has done is that has literally halved the number of truck moves from the port to the container depot that's in Thames Street. And then there's some other smaller things that we're doing around working with the log exporters to bring log cargo into the port after hours, if you like, so during the night, so it takes away truck traffic on the roads during the day when it's being used in the majority. So those are some of the things that we have done. This next slide just takes you through.
May I just ask a quick question?
Oh, yes, please do.
Is there scope to grow the B double trucks? Is that what they're called?
Yes. So there is, as our existing fleet ages and needs replacement, that absolutely is our plan, and we have actually ordered another 2.
And the reason I ask that is I'm thinking of Pampac, Pampac Port. And are there physical impediments that would need to be resolved to increase the scope of those trucks?
Yes, there is. So those trucks transport empty containers from the port to the container yard. And so because they're empty, the load is sustainable on the road. Pampac's product, it's got product in it, so it's too heavy, basically. So the B double is not certified with full containers on the roads.
I see, okay.
It's just that unique position of being empties. It doesn't mean to say that it's not resolvable over time, but that's the way it is at the moment.
I would be interested in another discussion to understand what needs to happen to achieve that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That would be good to pick that up. So into the future, I'm assuming this is not mood lighting, and you can all see.
No,
Hope you can see the screen better.
it's a sign.
Good mood, carry on.
So what's in progress, and this is around this networked infrastructure, and what you can see on this map is that we are working towards a connected network for two reasons. One is a connected network to and from Napier Port, but also Napier connecting into our central and lower North Island supply chain network. Part of that reason is off the back of Sixth Wharf, so we're building Sixth Wharf to accommodate the natural increase in cargo in our region, but we may as well utilise it. To enable this connected network, we have just signed off a CapEx and have started development or realignment of the rail on port, so a new siding there to be able to take increased rail, so this is logs and also containerised. We are still focusing inside the gate, so innovation around enabling us to increase the throughput of cargo on our existing footprint. The debarking of logs on the port, it's actually not really widely known, but logs were fumigated on the port right down the end with methyl bromide, which is a requirement for logs to be exported into China and India as a phytosanitary control. So we actually, prior to the government mandating that it needed to cease, we ceased it ourselves. We've implemented a debarker. So that's not so much on the transport side, but that's on the emissions side. We are electrifying our fleet where it makes sense to do that, and as we replace. And then what we're primarily focusing on is growth of the trade flows into and out of the central North Island. Relating to that, and what I wanted to point out on this map, it's actually on the next slide, but I think it's quite timely that I talk about it now, is we have an inland port or an equal share in an inland port in Longburn called Manawatu Inland Port, which is just south of Palmerston North. We've been started to work quite closely with the Horizons Regional Council Transport Committee. So they have a plan and central government support, which is also supported by Kiwi Rail's logistics hub that they're planning for Bunnythorpe around developing the central North Island as a logistics hub for the whole of the North Island. What we want to do as a port is to connect into that network. So there's several reasons for that. One is it increases the cargo to and from Napier Port, and hence that creating and developing prosperity for our region. It is also to enable consistent cargo flows between the central North Island and the Hawke's Bay. So already in the development stage that Horizons Regional Council with the Central Economic Development Agency and the Palmerston North City Council, they've designated in the northeast area, so just sort of between Bunnythorpe and where the airport is, an industrial zone there. And companies like Countdown and Progressives have bought land and are building warehouses there. So what we will see in the future is a change to our domestic distribution. So this is, part of it's related to Napier Port, but I wanted to raise it for us as a region around transport, is that food distribution will actually move to the centre of the North Island long term. And so where I really see we have an opportunity is to work with Palmerston North City Council and Horizons Regional Council on that network between Palmerston North and the Hawke's Bay, because not only will it facilitate import and export, but also domestic distribution of some products, not all, but particularly when it comes to the food network. I'd be really interested to understand if you've had the opportunities to hear about that work, and also what companies like Countdown and Progressives are planning in that region.
I guess to double down on their duopoly, but I mean, you tell me.
Foodstuffs are planning in Hastings.
Right, I was being facetious.
No, I absolutely get that.
How are you getting on there? I mean, we could come back to, were you asking a question about that, or were you?
Yeah, I was, is whether you're seeing a similar thing as, or are involved in the work that's happening in the central North Island, and as how we as a region can connect into that to ensure that we do have a connected network.
Like, I think that's a great question for us. We'll come back to that at the end, I think, and reflect on that, because that is a dimension into regional transport committee engagement dialogue that hasn't been across this committee since I've been on it anyway, so it's a great thought.
And we are part of that dialogue and are very happy to share as well. Also as part of that, and sits in the future plan for the port itself, then is the development of our site at Whakatū. So that's on hold for now, but as demand grows and the volume is there, we will bring that in as an inland port, and that is already connected on rail between the central North Island and then out to the port itself. We've also started work with KiwiRail on our role and place within the logistics hub that's planned for Bunnythorpe. And then the other area that is sitting in our future plans is around development and generation of cargo in the Wairoa area. So we have that sustainable rail network connecting Wairoa through to the port. So that's what we're working on at the moment.
Quick question once again, if I may. The ability to take freight to and from Whakatū, are there physical impediments for that rail line?
Yeah, I can take this one if you want, Andrea.
Yeah, that would be good, Nicholas.
We would need, so the rail line currently just passes just in front of the land. So we would need to develop access to that site with KiwiRail to actually connect the site with the actual rail line. That's definitely something that needs to happen. The rest of the line, as far as we know, discussion with KiwiRail, is the existing main line from Palmerston North to Napier, and hence there's no other impediment as far as we know, except the construction to the access to the site.
Thank you, Nicholas.
And we have started that work already with KiwiRail, particularly when it comes to procurement of even track. It's a long lead time, so we're still doing that work, even though the plans to build on Whakatū are now on hold itself.
Andrew, just time-wise, is this the slide where you tell us what we can do for you, or how?
No, this is where I see that there's absolute alignment between the port's strategy and the transport plan.
Okay, just give us the highlights there.
Yeah, and so I won't dwell on this other than saying there really is strong alignment.
Fantastic.
The point that I raised before, which is sitting at the bottom of this slide around alignment within the central and lower North Island, I see this is the opportunity for us to work more closely together and ensure that we remain aligned in our objectives, and then connect into the central North Island network. So the last slide that I had in the information pack is just to give you an overview of the work that we have been doing with the Ministry of Transport, and then the work the Ministry of Transport has been doing around the New Zealand freight and supply chain strategy. So when this actually kicked off was a series of meetings back in, I've actually got it on there, 2021, so when Minister Michael Woods took on the transport portfolio. And so our CEO and chairman of the board met with Minister Woods and expressed the need for us to take a New Zealand Inc. point of view when it comes to our supply chain, and particularly the North Island supply chain. That there is waste in our investment in infrastructure across the different aspects of the supply chain, and we needed to work together to take that waste out, but also to provide long-term resilience. We also,
That's a New Zealand Inc. proposition.
that's exactly right, yes. And so we also met with Peter Mersey from the Ministry of Transport and shared the same view, and also with Nicole Rosie from Waka Kotahi, and got agreement across all three groups. And so that kicked off the New Zealand freight and supply chain strategy, and the development of that strategy that the Ministry of Transport is now leading. The process that's being undertaken now is that the Ministry of Transport, actually before I say that, I would like to talk about that third point that I've got on the page as well, is that our view is that the design of the network needs to support cargo owners, and it needs to support the best interests of cargo owners. What flows on from the best interests of cargo owners is the best interest of you and I as consumers in New Zealand. The transport network, as I'm sure you have all seen, can be very vocal, and there's a lot of passionate people that have their own agendas, particularly when it comes to providers within the supply chain, as opposed to the people that are using the supply chain. So based on that, the Ministry of Transport last year held a series of workshops to understand right across all stakeholders in the supply chain what they believe the issues to be. Those workshops, there were multiple, and they were all run, because we were going through various levels of lockdown, they were all run remotely, and then they had remote breakout sessions. Unfortunately, there's no minutes from any of those workshops. But as an output from those workshops, the Ministry of Transport has provided a paper to Minister Woods, which is also going to Cabinet in March, around what they believe the issues in the New Zealand supply chain network are. So I don't have visibility of that paper yet. When it's been to Cabinet, then it will be released for consultation and review.